We'll explore how parents can make homeschooling easy and fun with actress, home education advocate Sam Sorbo on this episode of United Patriots Uprising with Gary Binford. I'm your host, Gary Binford. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. The video version you can find at YouTube, Rumble, the God Family and Country Television Network, the Rose Unplugged Media Network, vachristian.org, Conservative Television of America, the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com, YourNews.com, and WeSeeYouMedia.com. Wherever you go, subscribe, let us know that you're seeing the show, and please make sure to tell your friends about the broadcast. Now, at Radio Influence, you can find the archive of all the previous shows that have aired for 4 years. Some are video, some are audio, and some of the guests have been on several times, the likes of Tom Holman, Carrie Lake, Mike Lindell, Peter Navarro, Ted Nugent, Judge Need Pirro, Morgan Brittany, Isabel Brown, Ben Carson, Monica Crowley, Miranda Devine, Diamond and Silk, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Brigitte Gabriel, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Pastor Alan Jackson, Charlie Kirk, and Kevin Sorbo. You can find them at radioinfluence.com. And we're going to start a new thing. We're going to give a shout out on each podcast to one of the websites that carries this podcast. And I'm starting with the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com. The America First Warehouse is an actual building. It's a place in Suffolk County, Long Island, New York. And this is where I have met so many incredible guests that they bring in to speak. The likes of Monica Crowley, Tom Holman, Peter Navarro, Kellyanne Conway, John Solomon, Sarah Carter. There's just been so many. It's a great venue. They bring great patriots out there. If you're in the area, when they have something going on, please come out to the America First Warehouse. Come out there and you'll see Joe the Box waving his flag, and we have T-Mac and Steve Schmidt. They run it. It's a great venue. So once again, the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com. That's where you can find all of their information. My guest's mission can be stated in one simple statement. Quote, friends need to rethink how we define education. She most definitely has gotten that right, because many more parents are coming to grips with the shocking fact that far too many of our schools and colleges are nothing more than Marxist indoctrination centers. Well, my guest is not having it. She's here to tell you how you can fight back. Are you ready to find out? Well, let's get into it. She's an accomplished actress, producer, writer, and sought-after public speaker, an in-demand analyst on radio and television broadcasts. She hosts the Sam Sorbo Show daily and is a sought-after public speaker. I'm elated to bring to the show the author of the book, Parents' Guide to Homeschooling, Making Education Easy and Fun, Sam Sorbo. How are you, Sam?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's great to have you here. Your husband, Kevin Sorbo, he's been on 4 times, and he is a great advocate for the things he does. You're a great advocate for the things you do. And together you have been advocates for kids. And boy, that's what it's all about. In your recent speech at the March for Children's event in Washington, you began by saying, quote, all right, I have 3 minutes to convince you all that you need to homeschool your children. Well, you have more than 3 minutes here, so go for it.
Oh, yay. Okay. Well, what was great about that event was many of people were still on board. And so I think the next thing I said, like, I got such a round of applause. The next thing I said is, it appears my work here is done.
Done. It's like, thank you. Good night.
But yeah, my mission is to empower parents to educate their children themselves, which preserves the family, makes for happier children and happier parents, and actually smarter kids. And the statistics back it up. So homeschoolers score typically about 25 to 35% higher on the standardized testing, and that's the metric of the schools. And of course, we see what's happened in the schools now. The whole thing is turned upside down. So what they've done is they've changed their definition of proficient. But even with the degraded definition of proficiency that they have, they still can't meet the mark. So I think in Baltimore schools, they don't have any children reading at grade level, and they've downed the grade levels. So what used to pass for an 8th grade education today is not even a high school. It's so degraded. So if you go online and if you go to my website, you'll see a test from about 100 years ago, from the turn of the century for 8th grade. And there are questions that even just adults today can't answer. Name 5 parts of speech. What's the difference between a preposition and whatever. And kids don't know. They can't. Kids can't even tell us that our northern border is shared with Canada. They can't tell us who we won the Revolutionary War against. This is pathetic, and this is what passes for education today. So in my book, and this is what I encourage parents to do, is the book is actually kind of a workbook for parents, is take a step back and let's define our terms. What do we mean by education? Because sure, everybody wants an education for their child, and that's what we're told to want, right? We've all been schooled to want education, but we've also been schooled to believe that schools offer education, and they don't. And the proof of that is, if you're an educated person, you are capable of teaching a 4th grader. But most parents will tell you they don't feel capable of teaching a 4th grader, which means they weren't educated. They were schooled. There's a difference. And when you take that step back, as you are encouraged to do in my book, and you look at, okay, so what are my goals and desires? What do I mean by I want my child to get a good education? The school defines it as college prep and career readiness, which they are not providing anyway, because we have so many young people graduating from college unable to hold a job, much less a career, and severely in debt, which means that they are not fiscally responsible either, which is not the marks of a good citizen, frankly. And so that's what the schools are now turning out. But that college prep and career readiness has conditioned us all to believe that money is the highest value. Now, intrinsically, we know that that's not right. Intrinsically, as adults, we know really the most important thing are relationships, so that we're not lonely, so that we can function in the world, so that we can serve people and feel valued, right? And so if you take a step back and you look at it and you say, okay, so what do I mean by education for my child? I want my child to grow up to be a responsible, contributing member of society. I want my child to have a family, to have children, to have those children love my child, to have those children love me. I want grandchildren, right? When you start to think in those terms, trigonometry just doesn't seem that important. Which, okay, full disclosure, I love math. I tutored calculus in college. I adore, like, this is my wheelhouse, and I'm saying this, okay? It is not easy for me to say, but it's the truth. Relationships and your ability to relate to people and serve other people is more important than your knowledge of trigonometry and calculus. Now, if you choose, if your child has a proclivity toward math, serve that, give them that. And if you can't give it to them, you can find somebody who can stimulate them, who can challenge them, who can get them to step up and really dive in to those things. But that's not the teachers in the schools today. That is, okay, I don't go after teachers. I think teachers, by and large, wonderful people working in a very perverted system that does not serve the children anymore. And my heart breaks for them. But basically, if your child has a proclivity towards some specialty, you can find places that will serve the child, but they aren't full time. You don't send your child away to them. They don't spend 8 hours a day doing that. And so you can get this done as a parent. You can get your child an education in the manner that you would like to see, and avoid the schools altogether, which are now basically child abuse centers. They're just doing horrible things to children.
I hear you. Sam. You say, and boy, this is chilling. Children aren't safe in our classrooms until all of the ideologue teachers, rogue administrators are gone. You say schools don't educate. They shut down children's curiosity and desire to learn. Don't ask, don't try, don't read, don't think. Wow.
That's the messaging in the schools. Just for clarity, I don't say don't do those things. I say those are the lessons that the schools train us to just absorb. Okay, the school doesn't tell you that it's doing that. It's the system that does it. It's not the teachers. That's why I don't go after teachers. They're trying. They're trying, but the system is very detrimental for a child. So you take a child who is 4 or 5 years old and put them in a kindergarten class. This child is curious about everything. This child wants to learn everything there is in the world because it's all new and it's all exciting. And the first thing you do is you train that child to sit down and shut up and not to ask a question until they get permission to ask a question. And this lesson is visceral. You embody the lesson. And the lesson is, I have to get everybody to look at me. I draw attention to myself so they all know that I'm dumb, I don't have the answer, and I need an answer. This is a barrier to entry. This deters the child from asking questions, which is a deterrent to learning. It is the exact opposite of what they're claiming school will provide. And we ought to take it more seriously. The don't read comes from the fact teacher's going to give you all the information. Just trust the teacher. By the way, that engenders a trust the experts. We just went through a whole season of trusting experts, misguided trust, okay, that never teaches you first clarify what makes that person an expert. Well, she graduated a teacher's college, so she knows classroom management, but what makes her an expert in, I don't know, trigonometry? What makes her an expert in teaching trigonometry, right? And so we are conditioned to accept experts, so-called, and trust them. And that is very misguided. That's dangerous. And so this idea of don't read comes directly from the school paradigm. Teacher read the book, she's going to tell you what's in it. Whereas when you keep your children home with you and you show them how to read the book, I'll give you a quick example because typically stories are better for people to really understand what I'm saying. My son was studying logic. I'd never studied logic, although I'm very logical because it's the language of math. He came to me with this logic book and he said, Mom, I don't understand how to answer this question. And I said, well, did you read the chapter? First question, right? Did you read the chapter? He goes, well, I skimmed it. I said, well, let's go back and let's start reading the chapter. And we went back and we just started. And within a page, he was like, oh, I know the answer now. Okay. I said, no, that's not how you learn. You first read the whole chapter and then the questions at the end are to see, did you actually absorb the information in the book? Well, that brief lesson with my son set him free because now he understands how to learn from a book. And that's something that we don't teach kids in school. We teach them how to listen to a teacher and not to read the book.
Well, I have to say something right here and right now because what scares me and why I really wanted to have you on about talking about a guide to homeschooling and why we should be homeschooled. The Bible makes it very clear. The only thing it says about education is raise your kids in the way of the Lord. That's number one, which you don't get in school. And number two, it looks like in a lot of our schools and colleges, they're just basically Marxist indoctrination centers. So are they two reasons when you put those two together that homeschooling should be the way? Because if your kids do go to public school or to a lot of our colleges, they are going to come out with a very warped view of true life.
Yeah, and I want to speak to that for a minute because a lot of parents think that taking your kids to church once or twice a week will somehow mitigate for the 16,000 hours in school. And I will tell you this, an institution cannot claim to educate a child if it hides the most popular book in the history of the world.
Amen.
From the child. And so the idea that the school ignores or disdains the Bible is really should be the sole reason Christians keep their children out of our modern schools. That should be the sole reason. But also, yes, the Bible never says make sure your children go to a fine school. The Bible, the God actually trusts the parents with the child. But we've had decades of trust the expert, and the expert tells us what's in the book. And so now we have myriad Christians who go to church, don't read their Bibles. Pastor's going to tell me what's in the Bible. I don't have to read it. And so we don't trust our Bibles because we trust our pastors maybe, or we're just not reading them, or what have you. But God gave you your children. Why aren't you trusting God to know what's best? He didn't give you your children and say, put them in school. He distinctly said, teach them my words. And so to that, I'll add this. I accidentally, because I didn't actually know that I was doing this at the time, but I accidentally set my children on the correct path. And the way I did that was we did Bible every morning. We read, we answered questions, we discussed. There wasn't a curriculum. The Bible was the curriculum. We read it, we discussed. And that small 15, 20 minutes every morning, that small foray into the truth put my children on the right path. I tell people, if that's the only thing you do, and you make sure your children know how to read and know how to read a book, not just can read a book, but know how to read a book, you put them on the path to success. Because from then, they will always be in search of truth, and they will be galvanized against the lies.
Amen to that. You know, your latest book follows your previous literary works. One was called They're Your Kids, My Journey from Self-Doubter to Homeschool Advocate, and also Teach from Love. So the question, and you kind of got into it a little bit here with your son, how did you and Kevin get involved in helping to empower parents to accept the responsibility and challenge of raising the educational standards? You know, you're an actress, you're this, he's that, you know, you're involved in so many other things. Yet you homeschool, what, 4 children? How did you get involved? 3?
Three. They're now
I'm
23, 21, and 19.
That threw an extra one in there. My fault. Okay. But my question is,
okay, I would have taken it.
I know. How did you find your way in the time to get involved in this, and how did this become your passion?
Yeah, you know, I put it like this. When you're wearing a really great looking pair of jeans and somebody says, those are really good looking jeans, you tell them where you got them. It's fun. It's nice. It's a service. And when people compliment me on my kids, they need to know why my kids are so awesome. And it's because I've raised Christian children myself. That's why my kids are so awesome. I mean, they're awesome individuals, but it's because of the relationships that they grew up with, that security blanket that they grew up with, that they know who they are and who they are intended to be in the world. And children today who go to school are deprived of that. Children today who go to school are taught that they are a series of accidents of nature with no intrinsic value whatsoever, except how much money they earn. And that is child abuse. So just from the day one, they abuse these children. Now, I'm not saying that the teachers are doing it on purpose. I wouldn't say that, because most teachers, no. But there are some bad teachers, right? We all know that there's some bad teachers. We've seen the videos and stuff like that. But it doesn't matter. It's the system that abuses the child. It's the system that tells the child, sit down and shut up. You are not allowed to learn what you want to learn. You will be told what to learn, which is why, by the way, we all hated school. Now, some people loved school because of all the social stuff. I get that. That's fine. But did you enjoy learning? No, because they made it onerous. They made it boring. It's worse now. It's not better. And so you're really doing your child a disservice by putting him or her into that kind of institution. We're the first culture in the history of the world that institutionalizes healthy children. And then we get them home at the end of the day and they're not free. They have homework to do. Are you kidding me? I mean, if I hire somebody to come in and clean my house and she takes 8 hours, there better not be dishes in the sink, because I don't want homework after I hire her to do that. And I don't want homework for a child that I've missed my entire day spending time with. And now you're sending the child back to me for me to accomplish the homework. There are so many problems in this system that we have simply accepted as rote, just accepted as, well, that's just normal. You want to know another big one? Teenagers don't rebel. What? No, teenagers don't rebel. Oh, yeah, no, kids who go to school rebel. But teenagers who grow up inside the home in a loving environment, why would they rebel? My kids never rebelled. My kids used to seek us out to have the conversation with because they wanted the conversation. If you want that for your family, you have to consider home education.
I hear you. You know, you said something that was so stunning to me because I never heard it from this point of view, but when you unpacked it, it is so true. And as a follower of Jesus Christ, this, you know, who loved children and said, bring the little children unto me, this was so damaging, so devastating. When you said the culture tells our children they are worthless, and the way you unpack that, it was scary to me. So you want to tell people what you mean when you say that the culture is actually telling our children they're worthless. And you started it right at the point that I've always been saying for years a different way. If parents kill children through abortion, why wouldn't kids kill children? The parents are showing that life doesn't matter.
That's right. So I think I go farther.
Yeah, you went a lot farther.
Right? Our culture hates children. Our culture hates children. We abort them and celebrate it. We put them in gender affirming clinics and call it healthcare and cut off body parts. I mean, you know, and then we send them to school and give them homework at the end of the day. We deprive them of their childhoods. And somehow we think we're doing a service, or we've been duped into believing that it's a service that we're doing. No, we are abusing children. As a culture, we abuse children. Now, somebody said to me the other day, I know that I really benefited from the discipline that I got in school. And there's the other thing. Well, I got all my friends in school. Well, sure, that was the only opportunity you had. That's not a result. That is that's a side effect, but it's not a result. You can't claim that school does this because you ended. In other words, correlation is not causation. The fact that you got friends in school does not mean you were taught to socialize in school. And actually, the socialization argument is so silly because kids are told, stop talking to each other, be quiet, sit next to each other, and do not communicate with each other. Like, there are no classes for socialization in school. So to make the argument that school is good to socialize children is, by the way, like, it's a complete distraction from the actual conversation, which is the purpose of schools, which, you know, purportedly they educate, they don't. So once we say, okay, our schools are no longer educating, they almost never were. And by the way, we've only had school for 110, 120 years, something like that. So this is the grand experiment. It is a failed experiment. It's a failure. Our nation, the greatest nation in the world, was conceived by home educated people who never went to school. Well, some of them went to college, but they didn't go to school prior to college. So you can't call that school, really. And I'm just saying, you know, we need to rethink the way that we think about all of this, because we have accepted by rote a bunch of false assumptions. It's a false assumption to believe that children are socialized in school. It's a false assumption to think if you send your child to school, your child will be popular and get a bunch of friends. The odds are very much stacked against that. And so, you know, when people come at me with these interesting sort of side questions of, well, you know, I learned discipline in school. Okay. So one thing positive happened when you went to school, and that's how you justify sending your child into a system that has degraded since you went there. I had people say to me, our school, our public school is really great. And I said, oh, how do you find great? How do you define that? They said, well, it's where we went to school and that's where we met. Okay, that has nothing to do with
To do with
education.
education.
What, are you thinking you'll meet your child in school, or like what's that about? Like seriously, what are these people smoking? There's no
Yeah.
thought. And why is there no thought? Because they went to school K through 12 and they were disabled from thinking. Don't think. Teacher's going to tell you what to put on the exam. Don't think. Don't challenge the teacher. Trust the expert. Just regurgitate what you were taught. So we have debilitated our entire society through our schools. We've decimated the family through our schools. It is
It,
very difficult to make a positive argument to me about the school institutions that we have today. Very
I hear you.
difficult.
I hear you. Sam, you know this because there's the one big question that needs to be addressed. You must address because some parents are going to say, I don't have the education. I don't have the time. I don't have this, that, the other. Do you understand what it means if we got to keep the kids at home and everything? I don't even know how to do this. And how do you address the parents that say it's too difficult?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very sad that the system has convinced you of your incapability, which is actually the final product of school. The final product of school is you thinking that you can't. School does not empower children, it deprives them of that. And so you sit there giving me all of the excuses for why you can't. And all I'm saying to you is, I know you can. God knows you can. Why don't you? And if you think you're so incapable, why would you send your pride and joy into that system that completely debilitated you to the pathetic loser that's talking to me today, right? You, by your own admission, I'm a loser. I can't do it, right? I don't have the education, but I'm going to send my child in to get arguably what, something worse than I got out of it. I don't have the money. Do you know how cheap it is to educate your child at home? It's super cheap. Oh, I don't have the time because I work. You know what? Some sacrifices have to be made. I know a woman who worked full time with two little girls. She was left in the lurch by her husband, and she homeschooled them all the way through and worked at the same time. Yes, because home educating your child does not take more than an hour a day, 2 hours when they get a bit older, maybe. And it's not a full hour. It's like a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here and a little bit there. So maybe you need childcare. Maybe you need to join up with another family or do something where you join a co-op so that the children are looked after, because you can't leave a 4-year-old alone, obviously. But this woman did it all the way through, raised her children. They're highly successful young women. And then she started all over again. She went and adopted 2 more little girls and did the whole thing again as a single working parent. So don't tell me that you can't do it. I know a single working dad, married dad, his wife would have no part in it. The school told him, your child is stupid. We're going to hold him back. He didn't want that for his boy. So he kept him home for a year and he took the night shift. He worked every night. When he came home in the morning, he homeschooled his kid, brought him up to grade level, and got it done that way. So he had to work the night shift because she was working during the day, and he needed to be home so that the boy was, looked after while he was sleeping or whatever, but he was looked after, and they got it done that way. Don't tell me that you can't. Show me how you can, because God is bigger than your problems.
What was that like? And meeting President Trump, had you met him before? And what was that experience like?
So I have met the president on several occasions. I've just had the opportunity to basically shake his hand and say hello. And he's always very kind to me, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate what he's doing for the nation. I'm hoping to see great things come out of it. And I'm hoping that we can turn this ship around when it comes to school choice. And I know that that's not a popular position to take, but we have to start looking skeptically at school choice as a takeover of our private institutions. So every private school and homeschooler is in competition with the government model. And if you do better than the government model, then you are competition and a threat to the government model. And so we're seeing, for instance, in Illinois, they've got HB 2728, where they're going to start regulating homeschoolers and requiring degrees of them or whatever, which, of course, up until now, homeschooling has been super successful. Why they have the audacity to try to dictate to homeschoolers how, best practices when they are failing abysmally. I think the boast in Chicago is that nobody reads at grade level or something like that. Like, it's ridiculous. And yet you are seeing the government take over. And so I say this about school choice: with the money will come the strings. And so the moment that a private institution takes government funds, forget about it. The jig is up. You are now beholden to the government, and the government will dictate to you what you are allowed to do, what you're allowed to teach. And we have to be very careful. I will say that it's similar to government loans flowing into colleges. And now our colleges are just off the rails because the government took over. The government funded them.
I hear you. Sam, before we ask you to tell people how they can find you and anything you'd like to promote, your book is called Parent's Guide to Homeschooling. It's a workbook for every parent looking to protect their children, encourage creativity, true learning, and for families who want education to be easy, fun, and safe. Please tell people why they should get this book.
Yeah, so I just want to park on making education easy and fun, because learning is easy and fun, okay? Yes, at a certain age, it gets to be a little bit more challenging, but it's still fun. It's still fun. I know you don't believe that, but you went to school and they taught you that it wasn't, okay? But if you look at any child, they are eager to learn. They think learning is the best thing ever. So don't deprive them of that. Feed into it. That's how easy it is to educate your child. And when they get to a certain level, you will have taught them how to read the book, and they will teach themselves. And that's what we want. We want autodidacts who can teach themselves anything, because let's face it, the schools are, in theory, training children for jobs that won't exist. In theory. If they're training them at all, it's for jobs that won't exist. But you can do better than that. So if you go to sorbostudios.com, that's where all of my books are sold, including you mentioned this, the devotional Teach from Love. I happen to adore this book. And it's because I have children coming up to me and thanking me for writing this book. So this is a devotional that you do with your children. And every little day features, it's a 5-day week devotional. And every day features 2 open-ended questions so that you can have this conversation with your child regarding the merits of virtue. And this is an important sort of idea to teach your children, that virtue exists and that they can rise to the occasion. And so that's what this book does, because we're not teaching our children in school virtue. We're teaching them that there is no morality and that everything goes. And that's terrible, frankly. So if you go to sorbostudios.com, you'll see everything there. We also have a newsletter. I want to encourage people, sign up for the newsletter so that we can stay in touch with you. And Sorbo Studios.
Where they can find your podcast and any social media outlets you'd like to tell us about.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at the Sam Sorbo, and then Instagram is Sam_Sorbo, and you can put all that in the notes too. But if you just go to sorbostudios.com, you'll have all the information right there at your fingertips.
Yeah, Sam, I had a lot of respect for you, even though I hadn't met you. One of the times your husband was on, I asked Kevin, how do you deal with liberals and people that push back at you, like in airports and places? He said, well, yeah, I have to deal with it sometimes, unless Sam is there. If Sam is there, I don't have it.
That's funny.
So that was his comment.
That's funny.
Yeah, he said if you're around, he doesn't have to worry about anything. Is that... You got any comments?
People don't typically challenge. I think my ideas are sound enough that people won't challenge them because they're challenging the truth, and the truth will stand regardless.
Amen.
So hopefully some of this has sunk into your listeners and viewers, and hopefully I've convinced a few more families today to keep your children close. I'd hate for you to be
the good news. One gets one. Yeah. Yeah. And if you get one, then that person may get one and one and one, and we keep it going. I really appreciate you coming on, Sam. You're always welcome to come back. God bless you, Kevin, and the family.
Thank you so much. God bless you too.
You're welcome. There you have it. Sam Sorbo, everyone. I want to thank Sam Sorbo for coming on and talking about homeschooling and how important it is. She brought up some things that a lot of us never really thought about how they go about trying to teach, which is a complete different problem than what they're teaching. So there are two issues there. So please, everybody, please consider homeschooling. And as you can see, it is getting really, really, really bad in the schools. And if you're a Christian, just understanding that God makes it very clear, raise your kids in the ways of the Lord, and that is not being done in the schools. So please think about it, because they're our future. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Hope you subscribe, leave a rating and a review, and be sure to tell your friends about the show. Video, you can find us at YouTube, Rumble, the God, Family, and Country Television Network, the Rose Unplugged Media Network, vachristian.org, Conservative Television of America, the America First Warehouse.com, yournews.com, and WeSeeYouMedia.com. Subscribe, leave a rating and a review, and please make sure to tell your friends about the show. Well, that's it for now, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. So until the next time, this is your host, Gary Binford, saying God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless America.